You got thumb drive?
Yeah, or did you want to just?
No, thumb drive's really easy.
Pretty straight.
I don't
If you
care,
have it.
all right.
I like surgery, guys.
And Scott and Emily, I don't know
Like,
where
what
you're
you gotta
going
do,
to.
mess
So next
around.
meeting, I will have one for both of you.
I should I have one for Oregon State.
Perfect.
You're welcome to bring your own, but I can make a paper one for you.
Busted his goat. He had his buddy in the bassinet in the backyard.
It's not bad. I found it and it's stuff. And Porter will not, is not making it. No. Oh, I think he said so. Porter, I think he said.
We had some more, right?
On their property.
This course
So
is
those,
missing.
shoes have including you, huh?
Oh, man.
Say the very least.
Oh, well,
Go ahead.
maybe it's good.
We're ready, we're recording, so we can record.
People, you let those people in.
Oh.
Um,
I knew it. Oh, this might work.
Evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for another meeting of our Wolf Livestock Depredation and Compensation Financial Assistance Committee. I may not have gotten that right, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean. We have not met in a couple months. It'll be great to hear updates on a number of topics and start to look ahead to the next year. Let's go ahead and do a round of introductions. Steve, do you want to start?
I'm Dr. Steve Papa, a veterinarian in Deschutes County.
I'm Johnny Leeson, I'm one of the livestock producers.
I'm Ethan O'Brien, I too am a livestock producer on the committee.
Deschutes County Commissioner Phil Chang.
Scott Dugan, Oregon State University Extension livestock agent.
Dr. Donna Harris, retired veterinarian.
Julie Widener, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Wolf Lead for the Bend Field Office.
Aaron Bott, I'm the regional wolf biologist for all of Central Oregon, and I work with ODF.
Jim Patterson, Deschutes County Strategic Initiatives Manager, Staff Support.
All right. Well, it looks like the first topic is,
Can you have them?
oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
Sarah Lee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey there, Sarah Lee here, Rain Shadow Organics farmer.
And I see Dylan O'Leary. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, my name is Dylan O'Leary. I work for the Institute for Natural Resources as a rangeland scientist, and I also live at Rain Shadow Organics.
Excellent. Nice to meet you. Okay, well, with that, our first item of business is approval of the June 10th, 2024 minutes, meeting minutes. Has anyone had a chance to review those and want to make a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes from the last, what was that meeting?
June
The June
10th?
June 10th meeting.
Yep, seconded.
Any discussion or concerns about anything in the meeting minutes? No. Going to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, update on grant funds.
So we have expended the grant funds that were designated for the livestock producer who applied for the funds for the depredation, missing, and preventative measures. In the original grant fund, he applied for more. The committee held back $8,000 to decide later on. So we're kind of at that point now. So there's $8,000 in unexpended funds in the account that need to be expended by January 30th, 2024, or return to ODA. So I've written down a couple of options for you to consider, and you guys can talk amongst yourselves if you have other options out there that you want to consider for those funds. But you can consider providing additional preventive measure funds to the livestock owner who applied for them originally. And he's already received his grant dollars, but again, didn't get funded fully for what his application was. We could work with ODF and W or another partner agency to see if there is needs out there for purchasing anything for preventative measure funds to have on hand for the work that they do out in the field. Or we can return the remaining grant dollars to ODA, or if there's any other ideas out there on how to expend those funds. Just for record, I have not received any other grant applications or inquiries even about the grant from any other producer.
Can you remind me, we were going to do a certain amount of outreach.
Yep.
To
Was it the meeting before?
to seek interest in
Yes.
those preventative dollars?
I think the last meeting I came with, if I'm correct, it was last meeting, I gotta go look at the minutes again. I came with a draft flyer. The committee provided input. I think it actually was 2 meetings ago. It was 2 meetings ago. Had a draft flyer that internal communications put together for us. Committee decided not to go the route of putting it out kind of in a mass format of some sort of media press release announcement form. But decided to made some edits to the flyer, sent those edits around through a VCC, feedback from the committee members, received that feedback, then sent the final email out to all committee members to distribute as they saw fit, as well as to our partner agencies. Some who were in the room and some were expanded upon out of the room. So I don't know, apart from that, how much distribution that flyer actually saw, but that was the way that the committee wanted to go, have a more focused outreach effort versus a mass outreach effort to anyone in the county to curtail potential fraudulent application. I'm not sure. I don't think fraudulent application is the word, but to make sure it was targeted to the right focus group of those who needed preventative measure dollars or who were interested in preventative measure dollars. So that happened, and I have not received any contact. I believe my contact information was on that flyer. So I haven't received anything from them.
My memory was that Scott, you were doing some outreach as well, right? And they were going to give you some funds towards something, or dinners, or presentations, or something. This is me clasping in the back of my head.
I can pull up those minutes too. It was from 2 meetings ago.
Well, Scott had told me too when we were emailing each other earlier, that you had asked the Deschutes County Livestock, Association.
I did.
And you got back to me that they weren't interested in any more workshops at that time, that the
Right.
2 workshops. So, we were thinking maybe
There've been,
that might be, so there 2 or 3.
yeah, there've been 3 in a row, so they were
Yeah.
pretty good shape.
I mean, one other question I'd have is, to our biologist folks is, you're sort of our early warning system, for, where we might be, where you might anticipate we might have concerns in, the coming months or year. Is anything different now than it was 6 months ago, or?
Yeah, I've got, in my presentation, I'll talk briefly about different wolf activity in the county and around the county. Most of it's around the county, but there has been changes that do impact the county as well. As far as recommendations of purchasing tools or using finances to buy stuff that could be used in the field outside of outreach, I do have some recommendations that I've hit on in the past. Deschutes County is unique compared to some of the other counties that I work in because most of the people are operating on a smaller scale. At least land-wise, they're operating typically on private lands that are easier to fortify against predators, and that's great, actually. So in terms of making purchases, like fox lights is a tool that we've discussed before. Those work great for private pastures, private lands that are already fenced, that are containing livestock. And Those run at about $140 a pop-ish. And it'd be great to have those on hand. We, as an agency, we buy them, we lend them out, and very often we don't ever get them back. Hopefully they're still being used, and that's why we never get them back, but I'm not complaining if they're out in the field rather than in my shed, but it is a resource that I'm always trying to restock. So even just $1,000 of buying some box lights, great, specifically for
How
the
much did
county.
you say they were? Sorry.
About $140. You can get them on Amazon.
They come in 2 different types, battery or solar powered.
Yeah, and the jury's still out on which is better. I found that a lot of producers, I should say it's 6s. Some producers like the solar powered because they don't have to worry about the battery, but others are concerned, if it gets cloudy for an extended period of time that they're not kicking on or something like that. So if you do buy the ones without the batteries, then you have to buy the batteries too. So there's additional cost. I mean, that's a great and easy way to spend $1,000 is to buy some of those.
And there is a need
Yeah,
for more at this point.
they're fantastic, really easy to deploy. Even if there's just a concern, if there's no active depredation, if you have, as we often do in Deschutes County, people say, hey, there's lift tracks walking around the perimeter of my fence. It's like, well, I can tell you what to do. Put out some fox lights and keep them up for a week, and that should spook anything that's in the area. It works also with other carnivores as well, not bears, but works with coyotes too. It's a good tool to use.
So our goal is to be more preventative rather than behind. Certainly may be worthwhile. It's a fairly straightforward thing, measurable.
Is that something that we can buy and then, we wouldn't store that as a committee, right? We would have to buy it and put it in your guys' hands.
Yeah. You can decide where you want to keep it, but most counties give it to ODFW to keep at our office.
Yeah, so easy for you to get whatever's bringing it to you. Yeah. And you know the people to give them to, more than we would.
You get asked about any other preventative measures you use or
To spend money on?
Yeah.
We've discussed in the past fladry. Fladry also works really well with smaller pastures. We've deployed it on several occasions in Deschutes County in the past to a great success. Yeah, it's a good Deschutes County tool. I wouldn't necessarily, Emily can disagree with me on this if she wants, but I don't know if we need to buy any right now. We have a couple of rolls at the ODFW office. Here in Bend, we've got another couple of rolls being a mile of fencing, over at the Prineville office. And it's hard to envision us needing to put it all out at once and being short on fladry. It is costly. The fladry is, you're talking $5,000 to $7,000 for a mile of fladry, so that can burn up your grant money pretty quickly. Maybe it's not something to talk about this year, but in future years, if you want to discuss allocating some money towards that, that's a great tool to have. It usually takes about 6 months before you receive it after placing your order, so it takes a while to get it.
Is that just a standard roper? Does that have something you can electrify in the center?
Yep, so we get turbo fladry. Fladry is a centuries-old tool used primarily to deter wolves from attacking sheep. It's ribbons or flags hanging off of a strand. It's a movable temporary fence, and we up the ante by making it electrified as well. So.
The time for production really relates to someone sewing on the flags to the poly wire.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree.
Okay. Yeah, you never want to say you don't need it, and then you do need it.
Our office has some older fladry, and then you guys have 3 miles.
Yeah, we just got some more. So it is a good tool to have, and I would recommend thinking about it in future years when you've got flexibility and you're looking for money to spend. Definitely, fladry is a very, very effective tool. Again, Deschutes County is perfect, a perfect place to put it out in most situations. There's other tools too, which I don't have a recommendation for at this moment, but for example, flash tags, part of the study I was working on, work to generate flashing ear tags. They're LED lights that flash at night. They're motion sensitive, light sensitive, and they are a tool that a producer can easily deploy on livestock. It's very effective at deterring coyotes and wolves. You put it usually on your newborns when you're tagging them or branding them. So the ears, you just punch a hole in on calves or on your lambs. And it seems to work great. That tool is not out in the market, but it will be probably in the next 6 months or so, I would expect. Really effective tool for a lot of producers because it doesn't require more effort on their end to put it out. You're already branding your cattle and tagging them. You just throw on this special tag and you're done. So that's something to talk about in the future. Again, I could talk about a lot of different tools, but I think if you're looking for, maybe you said this, I didn't catch it. If you're looking for something to spend a specific amount of money on, I don't know how big your budget is, 1,000, 8,000. Yeah, I mean, I would get 15 Fox lights right there. There's $2,000 you're bringing up, and some batteries to go with it, so $2,500. Yeah, we can talk about some other ways to spend that money. I think carcass removal is probably gonna maybe come into the equation of how we want to spend that money. I don't know, that's something that I can bring up now, or I can bring up while I'm talking about.
So we can punt to the committee on that. So where we left a topic for this meeting from last meeting was for Aaron to kind of brief the committee a little bit more on carcass programs, see what Deschutes County allows, doesn't allow. And that was more of a general topic of just education on carcass programs and bump pits. But if there's, I don't.
It is a prevention measure,
Yes.
and I also am interested. You mentioned that the situation has changed in the county. Like if there's, if there are new walls in new places, and there's the potential for potential value of preventative measures in a whole different area, for example. Like that would be a good thing to consider before we make a decision about how we want to expend these last $8,000. So I almost would, I would almost suggest that we pause and hear some more and then circle back. Does that sound?
I had one more question is, in talking to people, do a lot of them know about this particular program? Or do we need to educate more about it?
I mean, that's a tricky question because even I have an experience bias, right? Everyone who I encounter, by the time I leave them, knows about this at the very least. Usually I'm engaging with people because they have concerns. That's how it goes, even in places with high wolf density. More often than not, you're dealing with concerns rather than conflicts. So what we explain to people is, hey, there are wolves on the landscape. I can make recommendations to you as to what you should do to protect your livestock. If there is conflicts, there's a committee put together to reimburse you for those conflicts. And also, if you're going to change some of your practices or if you need to purchase certain tools, you can seek compensation for that too. It's a proactive rather than reactive. So that was a long answer of saying everyone who I talk to learns about this program.
Let's look at that.
That's what I'm looking at, is more education or just wait and allocate that.
Yeah, I think we had a conversation a while back about I think Jen mentioned this, we were kind of concerned about opening it up too large, whereas with Aaron being on the ground and kind of where is the face of the issue and kind of targeting that area instead of just opening it up to any producer that's not even just in the county, as opposed to at the kind of cold face of wolf activity. that was kind of, I think we had a conversation about that a while
Yeah,
back.
that was part of that flyer discussion of like, do you want to publicize this
Yeah.
countywide in a mass media sort of way, or do we want to keep it a little bit more focused on areas of impact that Aaron experiences and that other partner agencies experience? So yeah, that was, I think that conversation was about 2 meetings ago during that flyer conversation.
And from memory, Aaron, it was partly your recommendation as well. I think you were on the same page with that.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's up to the county to decide how money should be spent, but there are people who are at higher risk of conflict than others, so you have to use prudence in trying to figure out where that money should be spent. Again, my experience is biased, I really admit that, but I do find it hard to believe that there are many people that don't know, at least in a hazy way, that there is some form of compensation out there for wolves. Typically, I do have people who say, they've had depredations and stuff like that, but they were never confirmed, they were never investigated, these are all hearsay. But the ones who do have depredations, even the new faces, they figure out how to get a hold of us pretty quickly. It's no secret, at least from their neighbors, they find out, hey, I think that I heard once that you can be compensated.
So let's come back to the grant funds later.
That was a good discussion. We have part of the picture at least. We'll come back. So the next topic on the agenda is mitigating political impact on producers and ranchers.
And we can flip this too if you want to go right into the garbage program, whatever is easier. There's not a.
Yeah, I mean, while we're thinking about it, while we're thinking about preventative measures, maybe let's stick with that. That'd be great.
Aaron provided a PowerPoint, just gonna pull it up.
Yeah.
There's more than one in here, Aaron, the one with the data, I got it.
One's a PDF with I'm a Mac guy, so when I have to convert things to PowerPoint, I never know if it's gonna work.
It takes me just a minute, this happens every city meeting that I'm in here, to figure out how to make sure that those on the screen can see the PowerPoint. Sarah Lee or Dick, can you confirm that you can also see the PowerPoint?
Come back there.
Slides, huh?
Okay, Sarah Lee,
No,
can you
you
see the
can't.
PowerPoint? No.
Literally.
I can't see the PowerPoint, is that what you asked me?
Yeah. That
I
was
can't, I
one.
just,
Okay,
I
just a
can
second,
see you guys.
this happens to me every time, I get there eventually. There's a share button.
At the bottom there, share screen,
Thank you, where are we?
in the middle, right there.
That big green arrow, it always takes somebody else to get me there. Oh, I need it on this side. And. All right, can you guys see it now?
Aha, now we can see it.
Okay, great.
Hey.
And let me just do full view. I'm so sorry about my incompetence of technology.
In the bottom right-hand
No, thank you
corner,
for-
if you hover over those icons, one should say start presentation. Be the one a little bit further to the right. One more. Slideshow, yeah.
Thank you all.
I would confirm with folks online that they are seeing this slideshow rather than like the notes version.
Can you see the full screen Deschutes County Wolf update page?
Yes,
for
we
those on-
can.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it looks great. Thank you.
Actually,
Yeah, you can just click, Jen.
Okay, just
It's
tell me
4
when.
slides.
Okay.
So. Yeah, I've got just a quick update to give regarding wolf activity in and around Deschutes County before I dive into what I was specifically task to present on, which is brainstorming ideas about carcass removal, specifically so Deschutes County can come up with a plan of their own. You can go ahead and switch to the next slide. So as many of you know, we monitor wolf populations across the state pretty intensively. And historically, we've had wolves to the north of Deschutes County, right on the border, as well as to the south of Deschutes County. And just because of the lay of Deschutes County, the geography, that's typically what I'm going to, knock on wood, just point out that we're always going to be having wolves at the north end and the south end of Deschutes County, and potential conflicts at either of those two ends, because that's where you have more semi-rural areas. That's where you also have a lot of your producers. Less so in the heart of Bend, right? I don't expect to be doing wolf depredations downtown anytime soon. Historically, we've had a pair of wolves on the Deschutes County, Jefferson County border known as the Metolius pair. They've been here for 3 breeding seasons, but this is the first breeding season where we've been able to confirm surviving pups this late in the year. So this is a male and female pair. Both of them are gray, and they had pups. A minimum of 4 pups were documented in July. At least a couple of those pups are still alive. Potentially 4 of those pups are still alive. Again, we only had a visual on 4. Litters typically range from 5 or 6 to fewer. But generally speaking, only 1 or 2 of these pups actually survive to the end of the calendar year. And that's just because life's tough when you're a baby animal. So just because you had 4 pups in July doesn't mean we'll keep 4 pups to the end of the calendar year, but that's the count that we had. They moved, their den site was located approximately in a specific area, which is in Jefferson County. So they den not in Deschutes County, but they have on many occasions come down into Deschutes County, kind of just north of Sisters. This wolf group, because of the recreational activity around Sisters, is frequently observed by the public. They come across them, or they come across signs of these wolves. Fortunately, where they den is not in an area where there is a lot of livestock husbandry. We're in a great place where we want to have wolves. I'll get a little bit more into their life history and what we're doing to monitor them in just a second, but most of the observations that we get for them, again, come from Jefferson County, so out of the jurisdiction of this county committee. Although they do, of course, come into Deschutes County. Then on the south end, we have the Upper Deschutes wolves. The Upper Deschutes wolves primarily lives in Klamath County. They've denned in Klamath County in the past. I should interject right now and say that wolves typically use the same den site over and over and over again, unless that den site is disturbed. And so unless there's a reason to think otherwise, I would expect that the Metolius wolves will den in Jefferson County again next year. The Upper Deschutes wolves denned in Klamath County last year, but their den site was disturbed, and they have since relocated their den site, and it's still, I believe, in Klamath County, but they do come up into Deschutes County on that southern end, kind of over by Sun River in that community up into that area. So at the very south end of Deschutes County. There's not a lot of livestock production going on over there in Deschutes County itself. And so I don't expect this committee to have to deal with any conflicts in that area, but it is possible. That pack generally fluctuates between 6 and 7 individuals. Numbers, it's biology, right? They're being born, they're dying, they're immigrating, so the numbers fluctuate. That pack is an established pack as well. Aside from those 2 groups, I have to emphasize again and again with the public that there are residential wolves that maintain specific territories or home ranges. Those are the two groups that I just mentioned, but at any given time of year, you can have roaming or dispersing wolves. These are lone individuals or pairs of individuals that are either looking for love or looking for a territory. It's not uncommon for us to have an individual not affiliated with these established residential groups wander through and show up in unexpected places. One of these wolves, which is just on the edge of Deschutes County right now, is radio collared. It's this individual here, OR 165. I trapped him this spring on the Warm Springs Reservation. It's from the Warm Springs Pack. And about a week and a half ago, he dispersed. So he is going to be reaching sexual maturity this coming February is when he's hoping to have a girlfriend. And he is currently dinking around in the mountains around Three Finger Jack. And yeah, it's who knows where he'll go or what he'll do. They walk, 10 to 40 miles in a day. So it's always exciting to see where they're moving on. You can go to the next slide. We go out and we monitor wolves in various ways. I've hammered on this with you all so much that it's an old hat now. But one of the primary tools that we use for monitoring wolves is by putting out collars. These are either GPS collars, which give us a couple of points in a 24-hour period. Typically at most, so it's not a live feed of where the wolves are. Or we put out a very high frequency radio collar, which just gives us a radio signal, a frequency to listen for. It does not give us GPS updates. We like the VHF collars, the very high frequency collars, because the batteries on those collars last more than 3 times the length of the GPS collars. But we generally will put out a mixture of both collars. The primary way that we radio collar wolves is through trapping efforts, and I've discussed this frustration in the past, but trapping wolves in Deschutes County is very, very challenging because of the amount of recreation and attention that wolf trapping generates. And when people find out that wolf trapping is happening in an area, we put up big neon pink signs so that people are aware of what's going on. We generally get attacked pretty savagely. So this is also challenging because Deschutes County has a lot of private land where we don't have access to go and try and trap and collar a wolf. So that's just how it is. So I can't guarantee that there will be collared wolves in Deschutes County constantly. It's an uphill battle that I have to face, but whenever we can, we do put out collars to help us monitor their movements better. All right, next.
Question real quick.
Go ahead.
That type of trap, was that the type of traps you use, the glass traps that should like?
Yep, so they're foothold traps. We use a long spring version, so you can see it right there. Number 7s if you're interested in trapping yourself, and I typically throw a grapple on it rather than staking the traps down. So that gives the chance for the animal to get away from the roads or the trails and out to the brush before I work it up. Yeah, we bury those traps so they are invisible to people recreating. It wouldn't hurt anyone if they got caught in it. More often than not, the concern is that your pet dog is gonna get caught in it. They are humane. I'll catch myself. For anyone who's interested, I'll stick my hand in the trap and pick up rubber jaws on them and stuff. So it's really a courtesy thing than anything else to tell people that we're putting traps in the area.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Everyone here should be aware that compensation money comes through the Oregon Department of Agriculture, not through Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And the only reason why I threw this slide up here is because I just want to emphasize the compensation is set aside not just for animals that are injured or killed, but also for financial assistance for implementing livestock management and non-lethal wolf deterrent techniques. And my next slide is going to be about one of these non-lethal wolf deterrent techniques. And it is, oh, I'm sorry, the format of my slide got messed up, transferring it to PowerPoint. It is to reduce attractants on the landscape. This is the best way to prevent conflicts from happening. Wolves are not great hunters, which surprises a lot of people. They will scavenge and will even prefer to scavenge whenever they get an opportunity. And so when folks have bone pits or carcass pits that have easy meat, easy rotting meat, even bones that are years old, wolves come into those and they investigate them. And they might become habituated to scavenging off of those carcasses, or they become habituated to coming into that area, which usually is surrounded by live livestock. So after chewing on some bones, they realize, man, it's not worth it. I might as well go get me something that's still wiggling, and they might go after sheep or goats or cattle or whatever. So those act as magnets, and time again, we find that when wolves show up and do depredate, especially unexpectedly for the first time out of the blue, it's usually because they came into something that was dead right next to where they depredated. So we really try and emphasize how important it is to remove those odors on the landscape. And all that really takes is I can go and we can bury the carcass. If people have backhoes, that's usually the simplest thing to do. Livestock die of natural causes all the time. And so most producers have a means of burying carcasses, but that's not always the case. And so some counties have generated creative ways to remove carcasses off of the landscape and haul them to the public dumps or to some designated site. This is something that has been practiced in many areas. In Montana in particular, they've got a really successful community program where they go out and they haul off carcasses that die of any cause. And I want to emphasize that these are not carcasses that are attacked or killed by wolves. These are just carcasses. When an animal dies, regardless of the cause, the carcass gets hauled off by the community, by the county, by an individual. And that's kind of what we're going to brainstorm tonight is what could Deschutes County do, if anything, to help with carcass removal, if that's something you want to pursue. How it's being done in other counties is, it's very variable. In some cases, the county dumps are they're covering the cost themselves as the county. I'm not talking the compensation funds, but the county has decided that they're going to foot the bill, for paying for the cost of any carcasses brought to their landfill. This is something that's been adopted in Crook County recently. It's still in its infancy, but any producer can come to the compensation committee and they can request getting a hull pass, basically a little pink slip, and they go to the county landfill and they're able to dump their carcass for free to the producer. And the county again has decided that they will just cover the cost of removing those carcasses. So with Crook County, they are not using any of their compensation funds to direct that towards the landfill. So there's an option. And
I missed that. So what is Crook County? They're not using their wolf?
they're not using their grant money for,
The county is.
the county is covering that, yeah.
Phil is absorbing.
So in other places, they actually have, and it really depends on staff. But in some cases, people can be hired temporarily to come around and they can remove carcasses, and it's a part-time or even a full-time job for some people. Driving around and picking up and hauling off carcasses. when livestock die, producers usually like to be private. They like to, they don't want people to know that their livestock died because of this or that reason. So one of the challenges of getting someone hired is finding someone that the community trusts. They're not gonna go to the bar and talk about where they've been picking up carcasses the most, stuff like that. In some situations too, the county has opted to spend their grant money to buy a trailer or even a truck and a trailer to haul off carcasses. So even if you're not hiring an individual, there's equipment available to be used under certain circumstances. If a producer needs to use it, if we have biologists or government agency personnel who are helping with carcass removal, then they can use this equipment. So there's that as an option, spending some of the money we were talking about earlier. I don't know, maybe you want to get a trailer. In some cases, I don't know if anyone's actually gone all the way out and bought a backhoe, but there's money to compensate for people using their own equipment to remove carcasses in specific areas as a community service.
We've rented backhoes for.
Renting backhoes, yeah. I'm gonna take a breath for a second because there's something else I want to shift gears and talk about, which will tie into this. We have several government agencies who all work together on wildlife-related issues. ODFW, Oregon Fish and Wildlife, is the primary manager of wildlife in the state. We also have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but we also have the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture's Wildlife Services. We have a couple of agents hired in Deschutes County that deal with wildlife conflicts. These are part-time or full-time employees that can go out and they can help with specific wildlife-related issues. The two individuals that are hired by Deschutes County are not involved in any of the wolf programs. However, we did just hire, we being the collective Royal League, we did just hire a wildlife service non-lethal wolf specialist, which will be stationed out of Madras most likely. This individual, their sole purpose in their job, which is a full-time job, is to work with producers to mitigate conflicts with wolves specifically. This individual is covering Crook County, Deschutes County, Jefferson County, and Wasco County. So it's a big area, but again, wolf density is not super high. It's not like, my area is bigger, not that we're comparing and contrasting. So they do have, it's one individual that will cover multiple counties, but they will be a resource for Deschutes County. They are the person who, frankly, I would call personally as the wolf biologist. If I had an issue where someone's concerned about wolves hanging out by their pasture, by their stock, someone might call me, and then I would call this individual and ask them to go out and put up flag tree, or ask them to go out and put up fox lights, or ask them to go out and haul off a carcass. They're just one individual, so asking them to remove all carcasses regardless of cause is probably not realistic, but that individual and the other two wildlife service individuals might be able to help with carcass removal. Oftentimes they're limited by the equipment that is needed to haul those carcasses off, which again brings me back to possibly securing a trailer or something that they could hook up to their truck.
Could you repeat what the title for that position is?
Yeah, I might get it off a little bit, but it's non-lethal wolf specialist, or yeah, something to that effect. So it's with, again, Wildlife Services. They conducted the interviews a week or 2 weeks ago. I was not a part of the interview process, so I don't know who got hired, but the interviews took place 2 weeks ago. I imagine the offer has been extended to an individual. So this is a federal employee. And yeah, they'd have their butt on the ground, ready to help Deschutes County as needed. So a really great resource. They will work a lot with me. I'm very excited about that because I have other things to do than just put up fencing all the time. So I'm looking forward to their help, and they're more than willing, volunteering them. They're more than willing to help out with non-lethal projects.
That non-lethal stuff is primarily, almost actually exclusively related to the reactive type of work that they do when a producer is having recurrent depredations or recurrent wolves coming into their pasture. Then we start to focus on, I'll put it in quotes, range riding, because we're not riding horses typically, or a lot of night work. Some of that night work does involve drone use as well.
This is a relatively new position with Wildlife Services, but we have started hiring people within the last 18 months in Eastern Oregon, as well as other areas of Central Oregon. And now we just got monies. We just got monies to hire someone here, more locally based. So.
And that position is within Department of Agriculture or
Yeah. Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, so it'd be APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services. It's a doozy. Yeah. So they're like
federal,
whole,
not state.
it is federal, yeah. So their whole mandate is to deal with wildlife damage among other things, but disease stuff too, unrelated to this. But wildlife damage primarily.
Yep. And just to emphasize again, you already have 2 agents in Deschutes County, but they are not related to wolves. Their job is not wolf related. This one would just be non-lethal related to wolves only.
Yeah, and they're also permitted through Fish and Wildlife Service, so they're covered for all of their activities that they do related to wolves.
So I know their supervisor, whoever this person is, I know their supervisor, and yeah, I mean, it's green lighted to use these people to help us put out non-lethal tools, and in some cases that might involve removing carcasses on the landscape. But again, I think it's a lot to ask any one individual to cover an entire county removing carcasses all the time. You'd be surprised at how many dead animals are on the landscape. Livestock are dying, they're kicking the bucket all the time, so that's a lot of work. We did contacted Deschutes County landfill just to clarify that they would accept carcasses, and Deschutes County landfill said yes.
Is there some thought on using this individual or some other information that you already have on kind of doing a survey where there's problematic carcass pits versus just any carcass out there?
That's really difficult because I have this phenomenal guy who I met and I really like him. I went out and did a depredation investigation, not in Deschutes County, different county. And it wasn't related to wolves. He's a smart guy. And after the depredation investigation, I said, well, can you remove this carcass? I don't want anything to come around for it. And he said, well, I know I'm not supposed to have a bone pit, but I actually kind of do. And he hoed and hummed and hawed about how effective carcass pit removal actually is. And I slapped him on the wrist and I volunteered to haul his carcass off to the dump for him, which I did do. My point in telling you that story is that even people who know better sometimes don't admit to the skeletons that they keep in their yards. So it's a really big issue. And also, that's one of the primary benefits of having collared wolves is the collared wolves take you right to where the bone pits are. They do. It's insane. They go right there and you're like
clockwork.
get on Google Earth and you zoom in and you're like, yep, there's a bone pit right there. That's why they keep having depredations in this neighborhood, because the wolves are habituated to that carcass pit.
So what about an education campaign focused on
Yeah.
colored wolves, bone pits, like, showing it maybe? versus trying to just eliminate bad actors. I
Yeah,
don't mean to be over speaking other people.
well, and it's, I don't know, I mean, I don't think this will sow contention, but in other counties too, neighbors rat each other out when they're like, hey, I cleaned everything up and the wolves are still hanging out here and my neighbor hasn't cleaned up theirs. Peer pressure eventually gets around and people do start cleaning things up because neighbors complain. So I don't know about outreach exactly how to be as effective as possible with that. Again, by word of mouth, every person who I interact with and Emily interacts with, every person that we talk to, we say, hey, by the way, you should clean up your bone pits. That's the easiest and most effective thing to do to prevent a problem from ever occurring. So, I mean, spread the word. Yeah, tell people, but sometimes, fortunately, it takes a conflict in order to actually get their butts in gear.
Question, isn't there something about you can dump animals in BLM, like 500 yards from a fence line? Isn't there something like that? And the reason I ask this question is because it's cheaper to dump it somewhere free than take it to the dump, like the landfill, and pay for it. So I'm kind of leading into your point of
Yeah,
it might be worth going to the
Found them
dump.
eating pigs.
Sorry?
We found the opposition eating pigs.
yeah, it's funny because
Or the wolf pet or wolves eating
Yeah,
pigs.
yeah, they were on unrelated, but we found a pig skull at the den, which was interesting, and then, you
there's
know,
no pigs in the area. so
none,
people
no
are-
wild, no feral pigs. I called Wildlife Services to confirm. I called the Forest Service to see if they had any suspicious reports of, like, sign of feral pigs, feral hogs. And then, you know, a few months later, we found an entire pig that had presumably been dumped out there that they were eating. So,
I
You
think
can legally do it, I suppose.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to emphasize this for folks that don't want anyone to be confused. The goal is to keep wolves from becoming habituated to an area where your livestock are concentrated, right? There's stuff that dies out in the forest on your 2,000 acre forest allotment all the time. And you can't get a backhoe out there. You can't get out there and bury it. You can't haul it off. And who cares? Because there's a dead elk right next to it, right? Things die on the landscape. So it's not that we are asking people to remove all carcasses everywhere. We're asking them to remove carcasses or carcass pits, which are next to areas where their livestock are concentrated and vulnerable. So that's the message we're trying to get across. And it's also, I'm not concerned about wolves getting a taste for cow if they come across the cow carcass. That's not a real thing. It's not that they prefer beef over venison if they get the flavor in their mouth. That's not an issue either. It's just preventing free, easy meals around vulnerable livestock.
Would at least some people, some, participate if we paid for it? Rather than try and hide it. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard of that elsewhere, and it might work. I don't know.
The problem I see is, you know, some of the carcasses are so far gone that you can't haul them in a trailer. You gotta bury them there.
Yeah, having a backhoe, and most producers have some kind of means of burial.
Well, I mean, I've got a list of backhoe operators that'll go out and bury a horse
Yeah,
for money.
yeah, that's a
They
great
just
brainstorming idea.
do it personally. I know them. They'll do it if I ask them.
There's still a service, it used to be Lee's.
There is 2 services in this county that'll pick up carcasses for a price.
Right.
I'm thinking a little more practically about what can we actually do. And again, I question making it a general offer to everyone to pick up all your carcasses, because
Couldn't you do it in just like the known area of the wolf, or the known wolf activity areas?
Yeah,
Could
so
make it specific
are
to
people
that.
that you specifically talk to.
yeah, this is again a benefit of having a radio collar is areas of known wolf activity polygons are more specific. Metolius Pack does not have polygon because they haven't ever had a radio collar. So we have an area area along Rain Shadow Organics up along Holmes Road, which is as soon as you're crossing into Deschutes County. We know the wolves hang out around there. That community is a community we would definitely want to reach out to versus a community more centralized in the county. So yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer to pick who would be most impacted and who we should be reaching out to.
I have two things. One, a fact check. It is actually a misdemeanor to dump on public land. It's actually, there are a few terms. Clandestine dumping was one of them. And then wolves do move through the eastern portion of the county, and there have been depredations, wolves stopping at bone pits out there. Wildlife Services had a wolf in a trap out there. So, you know, there's potential, by the way, for there to be some like benefits to sage grouse overlap as well. So something to talk about. I know Baker County had done something similar with their carcass disposal, and that it kind of two birds, one stone, no pun intended, where it was reducing the number of ravens in the area for sage grouse while also reducing any sort of attractants for wolves.
Is that a new misdemeanor or something?
This is a quick fact check. I looked and it did BLM's policy states you can't dump.
There's some history from Oregon DEQ that says, yes, you can.
Yeah,
So
so
county has a pamphlet saying you can.
It's one of the admitted ways of
Yeah.
disposal.
I don't know. I mean, my assumption would be that federal regulation would supersede any sort of county or state regulation.
Yeah,
But I'll ask our Office of Law Enforcement and
There's some
BLM.
history there on
Yeah.
life. I don't know if you've been around long enough, but there has been discussion about livestock carcass disposal. And the dump got told they had to take them because they closed they had a pit before and they closed it. So the dump had to take it according to DEQ. And then they also said you can bury them on your property, but it has to be so far away from a well and that kind of thing. And then they said you can put it on BLM away from a road. You have to get it out far enough.
So I
That was
will,
years ago.
no, yeah,
so
I'll
remember it.
fact check with BLM.
What's this brochure that?
I was digging around way back when, and I found a pamphlet online for Deschutes County saying that it was about carcass removal and that you could do it. And I'm paraphrasing, don't quote me exactly on all this, this was a long time ago. It was about 500 yards from any property lines, minimum, and then, away from waterways and public roadways and things like that.
Yeah, I'll look into it. So and send the group a message with, hey, this is what BLM et al. Got back to me with.
Sure.
There was also like a history, once we had a rendering plant in Redmond. And I'm wondering kind of what ripple effects that had when that closed down.
That's when it started.
Yeah.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I had heard that Wallowa County, their wolf committee does pay the landfill, so any producer can drop off their carcass for free. And I don't know how much they're charging. I wrote down here $30 a day, but that sounds really high for that.
You know what, that sounds kind of true, but I don't know, I don't know what the cost is. I think that's what they're charging the county, is because you have multiple animals. So Crook County, I know this because I just drove a cow to the dump the other day. It cost me $12 to dump a cow at the landfill in Crook County. So if you're covering multiple carcasses a day, presumably.
They're cheaper than Deschutes.
That sounds a lot cheaper.
Yeah, there's,
I'll tell you one to dump there, it costs about $24. Cow.
So, like, could we prospectively send money to the landfill? Like, send $1,000 to the landfill and just say, people who are advised by.
Would a voucher deal be better than sending them money, because then if it's not used, that money would have to come back, right?
Yes, that would be my question about
So buy
those two things
vouchers.
of like, what does ODA consider spent? Because so I'd have to look into this, we haven't done the grant reporting yet, so I don't know. But we do have to require, for the money that we sent already for preventative measures, in that contract agreement for the producer is like, we're gonna need you to provide this information to us for the end of the reporting cycle, so there is that question.
But we could buy a bunch of vouchers and then give them to, you know, wildlife services and other folks to distribute it to people.
Is there other landfills other than not landfill, like the one over near Sisters and that? I don't know.
That's a
No,
transfer
That's
station.
the transfer.
Okay.
They might have it.
Yeah.
Bring it into the transfer station.
It's like, because
Yeah.
what's the closest area, like,
Yeah.
to
Well, I
actual
mean-
activity, you know, you're really hauling them all the way to, not landfill, from Sisters?
I don't know where your landfill is in Deschutes County, but I would wonder the same thing, you know, are most people just gonna opt to bury it in their own backyard?
That's the problem, is it happens at night and you don't have time to mess around with it, so you just want it gone.
Right?
That's kind of what I was thinking, we maybe have vouchers for like one of those animal removal guys, where he just comes and gets it, you don't even have to be there.
At least for the people you talk to.
Right.
Straight up, offer something and we'll find a way to compensate.
Okay. One of the wildlife service agents that I mentioned, I talk to quite a lot. He works primarily in northern Deschutes County. Again, he doesn't work with wolf-related stuff, but he knows a lot of the producers in the area, and he's a local, so I tell him to tell everyone, hey, there's wolves around. You need to clean up your bone pits, and maybe he is one of the best tools we have for outreach when it comes to,
Well connected.
yeah, when it comes to just telling people, hey, would you like to have someone come with a backhoe and bury your carcasses? Because we'd be willing to do that, compensate someone to do that. I don't have an answer, but he,
And then we need that special person who won't kiss it down.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wildlife Services is generally known for their good relationships with landowners. We rely on them heavily as our point person for contact, because, you know, Fish and Wildlife Service reaching out doesn't always go over well. That's kind of more of a slow burn relationship than with Wildlife Services.
I have
I was talking about the backhoe.
The high, yeah,
Yeah.
The actual
part-time
hauler.
hire.
That's
I don't know if it would work, but I like the idea that you brought up of hiring someone, even if it's just a contract for, you know, go out for a week and bury people's bone pits. But those bone pits usually have been there for a very long time, and most producers, in my experience, even though they've got the equipment, they get busy like everyone else, and they say, gosh, I don't want to spend 2 hours on my backhoe burying that bone pit that I have. I can call someone and they can do it for me. That might be successful.
Is it relevant that we have a lot of areas of very shallow rocky soil here too? I mean, is it, you know, are there just places where it's a lot easier to go and scoop some earth?
Yeah, I mean, great question. This gets brought up where the ground gets really frozen in the wintertime. You know, what do I do? And our answer for that is dig your hole before the ground freezes. But you can't do that if you've got bedrock that's just a foot below you. So those people are going to need to haul carcasses to the dump. I mean, that's your option. So the deeper the better is what I always tell people. Like, you know, you at least want a carcass under 6 inches of dirt so that it starts to decompose, but the deeper the better. So maybe if you do have rock problems, then having a combination. I also don't know about small pastures, and I see alpacas and goats and sheep a lot, right? So not cattle, but these pastures are small enough that I don't know if these people are, if they have a bone pit or if they're already hauling these smaller animals off to the dumps, and that's something that they'd be interested in being compensated for. I don't know.
Is there a number, you said 6 inches deep, that seems a little shallow. I don't know how much those guys can dig, those wolves. Is there a number out there that you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the deeper the better. The reason why I threw out 6 inches is because most of your microorganisms living in the topsoil are gonna break down your carcass faster if it's at least 6 inches deep. So it helps to retard the scent. The smell of cows is in the air, right? But I'm optimistic that, yeah, a foot, 6
Foot or
inches to
so.
a foot, yeah.
I just wanted to be able to pass that on.
Yeah, people can put it 10 feet in the ground, great. In most cases, they're usually putting about a foot of soil on top of it. And that's what I would recommend.
Are you really trying to get decomposition? Because I mean, you dig that deep, like there's.
Then you don't decompose.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. No, you got that sweet spot in between, right? The shallower, I shouldn't say shallower, that's the wrong word, but if you're in that topsoil zone, that's where the decomposition is gonna take place the fastest. I mean, it's, you do what you can. I just tell people, get a foot of soil on top of it at least, a couple feet, 3 feet, all the better, so.
Okay, so coming out of that discussion, or assuming we've covered this, is there like a recommendation or a project concept, an investment concept of the committee?
Can I offer a thought? So our next meeting, the agenda item that we'll discuss this later, potentially for you guys to consider is what grant dollars go after next year, because the grant opens and closes in February of next year. So I'm wondering if that non-lethal wolf specialist and the 2 wildlife specialists for Deschutes County can come to that meeting and put together maybe a coordinated program of some sort for a carcass pit to look to go after for 2025 grant dollars in a coordinated way that might work with the committee here and all these thoughts versus trying to spend the $8,000 without, with somebody new coming on who's gonna be, looking at this. I mean, and potentially what I was thinking there too of this, kind of this thought that's been percolating a while for several months with the ad hoc committee that I'm on, but also with this group of, is there resources here to join forces with Jefferson County, Crook County, and a couple of these other counties to kind of have a more coordinated program? And you can also go after coordinated grant dollars too, but, looking at it, just to put that out there as something maybe a little bit more expanded upon with the new people coming in, engaging with wildlife specialists, although they're not wolf specific, but in Deschutes County that I don't think we've engaged with yet in this committee, might be a way to move forward with kind of providing or building out a more thorough carcass bone removal pit program for 2025 grant dollars. Right now, there's not any grant applications, there's not been another depredation or livestock loss that we know of. We could see potential applications, but just wanted to throw that out there as well.
And Jen, can you remind us also what the expiration date is?
So
On the funds that are in hand right now?
Yeah, so I was just looking, so a couple of things in our conversation. I think the voucher, if you wanted to do some sort of voucher for the done for carcass, that does seem to be a very eligible cost to use funds for this year. The report's due December 31st, although I think from last year, from what I heard, maybe they pushed it back a few weeks. But the funds need to be expended and that final report needs to show how those funds are going to be expended no later than January 30th of 2025 for these previous grant dollars. It goes February 1st to January 30th, basically, is the grant cycle of using the funds. Now, the application process is reporting process a little off on that.
Sorry, February to January 1st.
January 30th, 2025, the 8,000 remaining dollars will need to be expended. The report due to ODA on how those funds are being expended right now, per our grant agreement, is due December 31st of this year, which I'm happy to put together. I'll work with the producer that we already did, but so considering this is the last meeting of the year before that report is due, there needs to be some sort of thought process on how to spend those $8,000. But if you want to talk about a really thorough carcass bone pit removal program, might be something to look at for the 2025 grant. Just wanted to throw that out there
Yeah,
because
no, that's-
as you're
those
continuing
are-
your discussion.
Donna, were you gonna make a suggestion or something?
Well, I was just wondering, maybe we'll have to wait for that, but I was thinking of, the 2,500 that you were sort of requesting for Fox lights to just have on hand. That might be a good use, and I don't know if we have to wait for the wildlife services for that.
You don't have to wait on anyone
Well,
for it.
I mean,
Just-
to
yeah.
get a feedback. So, I'd present that. I think it's
So that could be part of our package, is it Fox?
Fox,
FOI.
Fox light.
They're made in Australia originally for dingoes, and they work on wolves and coyotes too.
Okay, so Fox lights, possible piece of a package.
We're about seeing if the dead stock removal guy will do like gift certificates. Well, I mean,
A voucher?
not sure, yeah, that's the word for it. And then just having those on hand,
With personal notifications
not,
or recommendations.
We essentially have a deposit with them.
Right.
And then,
With the dump, is that what you're saying?
there's a dead stock removal, so
Okay.
he said there's 2 of them. That way, I mean, 'cause some people don't have a trailer, if they don't even wanna go do it, this is now someone's going to come remove it from your place, just like you had to hold the one off. I mean,
But are we limiting that to a wolf kill prevention? Or are we doing that?
No,
No,
recommendations,
preventative.
Any pit?
personal recommendations.
Okay.
preventative on
In the critical areas,
right, like in a key zone.
Key zone, or it was within reason, yeah.
I was wondering real quick if, we've had a lot of success with the preventative measures this year that were funded through the grant, and I was just wondering about applying for that again. For the ranch, the Pitchfork Tea Ranch.
Yeah, necessarily, are you thinking for 2025, or are you asking, whether an additional portion of the 8,000 we still have in hand are available?
I was thinking more, it sounded like we were mostly talking about 2025 at this point. And so just responding to kind of Jen's like, okay, what are we thinking about potentially putting in for next year? And if we can't come up with something to do with the $8,000, I feel like it would be really well used in preventative measures on the ranch, but I just thought I'd put that out there.
And that was part of, I think that was 3 meetings ago, when we received the grant award back from the state. The committee chose for the preventative measure funds to give the rancher Pitchfork Tea a certain amount, pull back 8,000. One of the considerations at that time was, the preventative measures was less than what was originally asked for from Pitchfork Tea, which all of the categories were just based off of the state allocation. But one of the considerations that the committee did say at that time was we could always supplement, because Pitchfork Tea, we know, are expending way more funds than what they've been given. So just to reiterate what Sarah was saying.
Yeah, so on our potential pieces list, I mean, that is an option as well.
Can I ask Sarah, Lee, what's the ongoing expenditure prevention wise? Like, is it the range
Well,
riding?
Yeah, the range riding is really, a daily activity. So I just thought that it might be, because that, it really, hiring someone to do stuff like that is just, people are expensive, And so, just especially for next year, and since we've had so much less trouble, although we did have one kill, I believe, is, Aaron can maybe corroborate that, but also some definite activity, and it seems like we've had a lot less trouble based on our preventative measures, but having some help to maintain those feels important.
Yeah, Sarah Lee was just referencing, Sarah Lee was just referencing 2 confirmed attacks that took place in Jefferson County and in Wasco County, so not Deschutes County. But same operation.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that we're on the border, right? So it's like, Yeah, I guess it's just like maintaining that, because they definitely are affecting the herd at the home place, you know. So
Do either of those counties have a wolf committee? Does Jefferson County, did they ever get their wolf committee going, or has Wasco County for applications for compensation there, and do you know?
Yeah, not to digress at all, but yeah, Jefferson County got one together, but then had, I don't understand, but they did not apply for any reimbursement for the depredation that happened
I
last
think their
year.
committee was established after. I think their
Okay.
committee was established in January, February of this year, and the deadline was February.
Okay.
And so.
So that compensation
yeah,
would happen, and
yeah.
Wasco County is also trying to get one put together right now. They've had one in the past, it disbanded, and then they had this depredation that is being referred to right now, and so they're trying to get it put back together again. That one too, but this is a different one.
Okay, so on our kind of list of options, we've got fox lights, we've got this idea of making a deposit with a hauler of some kind. We've got, adding for preventative measures for the ranchers that experienced depredation last year. The flattery idea, people thought that there was enough already in the region.
Yeah.
Other things to consider?
I don't know how the voucher thing would work, but it sure sounds good, because even if you had success, you wouldn't have a lot of success this year, because it's primarily word of mouth that these things are getting passed around. And so if you can get a voucher and then have people use that voucher, that's a plus. And if you end up not spending as much money as you expected, then you could fall back on, in December before the deadline, figuring out what you're gonna spend your remaining money on, which could be equipment. Equipment like a trailer is something we probably have to do a little bit of homework on to say, hey, is that a worthwhile purchase, or do we already have one that we use, and so we don't need a trailer?
And who would operate?
And yeah, who would be
It would
taking
be
it?
county property at that point.
Yeah, that's where it gets pretty tricky on that. If, I think, I don't know, we could gift it to, or it's a pass-through grant, so it could be passed through the DPW, so then the trailer spot is passed through to an agency, and then it's theirs.
We do also, we have a natural resource shop in the county. They are working with landowners all the time on weeds. So, theoretically, I know they have like a weed, it's not for hauling weeds, it's like, it's an education trailer. So if they've got a place to store that, they've probably a place to store.
I would just say the question then that would arise is like, who's gonna manage that?
Yeah.
Like, is that the natural
No, I mean,
resources, then are they,
yeah.
yeah, so it gets a little tricky on that
Yeah.
management
Unless
factor.
would you have to be like certified to pull the trailer?
Like all
I don't think they're gonna let me
But
go to the
maybe-
county pickup.
I guess this is not my county, and I'm just making recommendations, but we don't need to make a decision about trailers and trailer purchases right now. That would only be if the money that we allocate towards a voucher for carcass removal, for landfill use does not expend all of the $8,000, right?
Do you think that the trailer is a good idea? The only reason I'm even thinking that, because if, say the trailer's gotta be stationed in Bend, and they tear a bond, is someone really gonna drive to Bend, get the trailer?
It's only a good idea if it's gonna get used.
Right, that's the only thing that I see. Like, I've got a dump trailer at my house, so it's convenient, I can throw something in there and go, I don't.
Well, what about, my mind went to this non-lethal wolf specialist employee that covers multiple counties. If that person is doing, as you said, kind of a lot of the legwork, putting up flags and dealing directly with a lot of the personnel, people that are, other than yourself, sounds like that person might be the right person to have access to the trailer and have that nearby them as they jaunt around the countryside. And then it's multi county, so we could go in with other counties on like a joint trailer.
Tri-county trailer.
Yeah. And some fun colors or something.
Yeah, I think that's something that has been done in other counties where equipment's been purchased for, personnel, and in some cases it's been a trailer, so. I like the idea, if it gets used, that's great. In the meantime, how do you get rid of the carcasses that are on the landscape? Probably maybe offer to have someone come in and bury those carcasses and cover the expenses for that, as well as saying, hey, if you have carcasses, the dump will take them for free. No cost to you, I should say.
Maybe talking to some smaller contractors that would offer.
It's a retired.
Oh, you said you have a list of people, yeah. Would they haul their backhoe to, oh, they would, okay.
Mostly retired.
So that would be another, get some gift certificates from those guys.
You just gotta be able to drive to it.
Yeah, and get an idea of how much they would charge, just out of curiosity, if it's,
Several hundred,
yeah.
depending on how far to drive.
I think the guy to haul it off to the dump last time, I think it's, I want to say it was $225.
Something like that, depending on how far and how big.
Right.
For the trip.
I think,
the work.
you know, kind of from my thought process, the key question is, what will get the landowner, the livestock owner to do it? I mean, if they just need some education and then they'll use their own backhoe and they'll dig the hole and get rid of it, then, then you just give them education. If it really takes, okay, we'll contract somebody to come out and do it, to just take it away, make it go away. If that's what that's kind of what it takes, then, you do that. Or, anything in between. I mean, having, renting them the backhoe or, a voucher at the landfill, but then, like for the voucher at the landfill, they would still have to haul it themselves. So it's kind of, I guess the key question is how much labor do we think the livestock producer is willing to do? And if it's not very much, then I think we really need to just kind of dig deep on the, get Wildlife Services a trailer or set up these vouchers kind of pathway. And I would love to hear from, folks, our livestock producers and, our veterinarian that works with a lot of livestock producers.
Most ones in this county would like it handled. They don't want to do anything.
So they have,
And it's easier just to drag it off and leave it and not mess with it.
So if we want it
Easier
all the way or buried, we should get somebody to do it.
And like I say, it always happens on the wrong day and they're busy and they got something else to do. And it's like, okay, we're just going to leave that.
But I was thinking, you mentioned something as well, Aaron, that the county, I don't know which, I can't remember what county you said, actually covered the cost of the landfill. That was not covered by the Wolf Committee within that county. So we could request that, having to know someone on the county board of commissioners here, that the Deschutes County landfill fronts the cash for just for the dump fee, so that that's not going out of our pockets, or it's not an extra charge. If we do need to hire someone to haul animals out of here, that part of it is not covered by our funds. That could be, I don't know, that gets tricky.
That would be for sage grouse too,
Yeah.
for instance.
Because then it's like everyone's contributing to removal of even small producers, because I think you said as well, Aaron, that there is a lot of small producers. Most of the county is there's a couple of big ranches, but a lot of small places that don't have that equipment.
But then I might have to drive a hard bargain for the county.
Yeah, I have to give something up.
Where we're trying, you may have heard, we're trying to find a new landfill right now, and
Yeah,
that is gonna be very pricey.
Oh,
So
yes.
I don't wanna,
Take more money out.
I don't wanna give more of the solid waste, money.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, the sage
And
grouse,
if the cost is only $25 an animal, that, you know, if you guys could just set aside $500 for
For the year or whatever.
is there money allocated for Deschutes County sage grouse stuff? I guess I'm just not
So-
clear about that.
I don't think so, but, you know, the landfill is not going out on the Roth property as far as I know, which is, saving the county millions of dollars in terms of sage grouse mitigation. I don't think there will be any mitigation required for the current potential site for the landfill, which is Moon Pit. However, ODFW and Fish and Wildlife Service have talked a lot about there will still be impacts of that landfill to sage grouse further east. And one of those big ones, the biggest one, will be the increase in raven densities. And ravens are like the biggest limiting factor for sage grouse in some areas. And so any chance to get bone piles out there in the landfill or buried is a great thing. And like I said, wolves have absolutely stopped through those portions of Deschutes County. So just something to kind of stew on. It's not going to happen for quite some time, but I sit through the SWAC meetings and I've heard them talk about this. So, you know, it's something we should put our heads together and think about, because there could be, you know, a net benefit for both keeping wolves away from livestock out there, out east, and sage grouse. And that, you know, like has applicability in the eastern portion of the county. So obviously not where all the smaller areas are, up by the Metolius schools and up Deschutes schools and such.
I will say that we're going to have a statutory requirement of at least $700,000 of, you know, kind of upfront mitigation investment, and then over time, something like $8,000 a year for 100 years. Like kind of ongoing mitigation requirement. That's the bare minimum, and we committed to doing more than the bare minimum. So, I mean, this could be. No one's talked about this idea as part of that mitigation package before, but I mean that could come together. Yeah. Unfortunately, pretty soon the landfill will close in 2029. Not landfill. So, I mean, I guess we'll be back to a discussion of whether you should drop off at a transfer station or not. I mean, the one in Redmond, the new transfer station in Redmond, for example. I mean, it's, you know, there's this huge concrete floor, and then there's the truck pulls in, you know, underneath the lip of it, and you just push stuff in. And I mean, it's gross, but it's grosser than a lot of the other stuff that's going to go on that floor. So yeah.
It's July.
Yeah, every time. How it is, yeah.
I gotta say, the only place to take carcasses is Prineville.
Burke County.
But is the only place to take carcasses? Is that really?
Yeah, it's the only place that'll actually take carcasses. So like that's where like Butcher Boys takes all their carcasses, and like if you get your horse put down at the vet, that's where you're gonna take your carcass. I mean, you know, Prineville, like you were just talking about, oh, you're gonna dump it on a concrete floor and they're gonna like scoop it off and it's gonna be this bloody fucking crazy thing, and it's like no, they're not. That's not allowed at like Bend or Redmond. No way.
No, they do.
Yes, we take them to Bend.
I've driven down the pit with a cow and a dump trailer and just dumped in the pit.
Wow.
We talked to Tim Brownell, and he confirmed.
They separated it with everything else.
They've separated it. They do something.
I don't know what they're doing.
So we should. I mean, we do have a couple other things on our agenda. Like, I do need to narrow this down. We have, you know, on our list of options, we have fox lights, we have, you know, more preventative dollars for our rancher who's experienced depredation already. And then we have a kind of range of ideas on carcass removal. And also, we have the choice of whether we want, what we do about carcass removal this year, what we do about it in our January application for next year. But I mean, given what we've discussed so far, does anyone have a suggestion for, or something we'd want to consider as part of a package for carcass removal this year?
And I'll just pipe in there to also consider the administrative aspect of that program. So to be able to do it for the grant program, to be within the compliance, it's pretty lenient, but like, there has to be some sort of organized voucher or carcass removal program that administratively is completed before the end of the year by somebody. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
My head was kind of, my gears were spinning about like, all right, if we give $1,500 to some, hauler, I mean, how do we ensure that they actually give us the service when it's finally needed, as opposed, instead of right away? Which, maybe that's not that hard, maybe they can sign a contract of some kind.
I can look into specific carcass haulers and talk to them about, basically, I would set up an account and we would hold funds in a certain account and they would bill it when they do it. And I would use it upon your recommendations that they need to do something quickly. They can usually get out there in a day. They're pretty good.
Right.
And if we don't end up using the funds, then we can shift them somewhere else or
Give them back.
Give them back.
I would
Always that option too.
I would assume even just doing something like, turning the, not physically, but, like electronically transferring the funds to, someone like Wildlife Services with, some specified parameters around that, an agreement. You will use these funds for this, we're transferring them to you now, and, here's the contractor that we've set up with. I would assume that'd be okay. I mean,
Yeah, so if we're talking about transferring to another agency who wants to take responsibility
We
for
can't.
that, right?
That would be very thoughtful. Wildlife Services absolutely can though. They're probably the easiest in fact.
And so we could draft, we drafted up a nominal contract for the rancher saying, you're getting these funds. By getting these funds, you're gonna report back to me by the end of the year, X, Y, and Z. So I can report to the state. So there was that contract. Administratively pretty easy on our end. I'm wondering if that is the route that we go, that potentially another subcommittee group wants to meet once or twice to,
we like those.
you guys meet over beer, so why not? But to create an outline of like what that would look like versus just like, here's funds. But it sounds like maybe there are some parameters that the group is considering. So to have that in some sort of writing, we could do all that by the end of the year. Maybe a subcommittee wants to meet, put a one-pager together about what that program looks like. Then we can do it via email, BCC email, not reply all email for a public meeting, or meet online to review that before the end of the year and say, this is what we're doing. I'm happy to reach out to Wildlife Services to see if they're willing to do that. But if there's, interest in this group of putting that's kind of how I kind of see that happening by the end of the year to be in compliance with everything. If you want to go that route. Does that check about what you're thinking?
If folks are willing to provide some input, but they want to spare themselves like a whole meeting, they can just jot down some stuff for us and we can send it to county legal and they can produce an agreement.
And just to confirm, it's not necessarily based on confirmed wolf kills or anything, it's just any bone pits that are in your polygons, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be wolf related, and hopefully it won't be, because knock on wood, we don't have a lot of conflicts in Deschutes County, so we want to spend the money.
And we can throw in the,
you know, a couple of polygons out east for, you know, seeing the areas of scenic route concern.
Yeah,
Are you in this area? Have you got a bone pit? Call us. That kind of-
Yeah. Our areas of known wolf activity, aquas, just, I think everyone has this in their head, but the area that is most likely impacted by wolves in Deschutes County is your Lower Bridge to Sisters community. So it's that whole northern strip. That's the community that would get most of the attention.
yeah, the places out east are good, holdover points for wolves. They encounter a bone pile and they're like, oh, I'll stop here for a few days, and they do. So those are always good to clean up, simply because you just don't want a wolf stalking there. Good low hanging fruit in that area of the county.
Does there need to be any training on the person cleaning up bone pits, like what can be left behind, what should be taken? Is it just like as much as you can get?
Yeah.
Or bury it?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Bury it
common
down?
sense, do your job.
Yeah.
Don't do a half-assed job. So,
Take that fleshy bits.
yeah, do as much as you can. It's all that it really requires.
Hopefully, if it's only little pieces left, then you only have little scavengers.
Right. Exactly. It'll get picked up by the birds. I mean, again, I like to emphasize that bleached bones, even if you haven't been operating livestock for a long time, but you've got bone pits, those still are attractants that are good to clean up. So,
Do you have any in mind, per se, that you know of that you target first and foremost?
producers?
Just bone pits? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got a couple in mind that I can think of. You know, I've talked to some folks and I'd like to see some of their bone pits cleaned up. And they're great. It's not like they're obstinate and they're, you know, being a pain. They're just, it just hasn't happened yet.
So,
And these are situations where you should haul it away. You don't want to just throw a foot of soil.
I mean, you can bury anything. It's just dependent upon the circumstances. So it's not that hauling it away is necessarily better than burying it or vice versa. It's just whatever is most practical. And some of those carcass pits, those bone pits, have been used for decades. And so you're not going to haul that away. You're going to need to bury it.
Like, legacy bone pits in some cases.
and there's a monster bone pit off, this is from gossip, but off the highway, just outside of Sisters Avenue, Blackbeard. There's like all the roadkill just gets picked up and dumped in one of
Yes.
those.
ODOT,
Yeah, we have those locations.
Yeah, we're trying to. Try to.
But yeah,
Solve
there's
those
one
problems, too.
outside of Ben off Skyline Road too. Yeah, it's where ODOT has their little areas where they dispose of roadkill, which is good ultimately. But
That's a dream.
other things definitely. This is a very interesting place to put out trail cameras. That's for sure.
So, all right, so we got, do we want to assign some numbers and make a motion and vote on some of this, or? And how about I'll just read some, well, there's these three pieces, and we could put numbers to them and then vote on the package. So just tell me what numbers you want attached. So for Fox Lights,
2,500,
okay.
just what everything else.
Or this kind of deposit with a hauler concept.
Keep a couple thousand,
Two.
knowing that it may not be used.
Yeah. Well,
We
hopefully.
could give it back, it'd be nice.
Could give back or you have plan B. So
I mean.
what I would caveat with that is that if Wildlife Services agrees to be the holder of those funds,
Yeah, then once we
Then,
transfer
right.
them, they.
right, but if they don't agree to be the holder of those funds, then those funds will either need to be reallocated somewhere else or give back to the state.
Do you have reporting requirements for those?
Yeah, so it's pretty minimal, so that's kind of what I was trying to get at before, like, it's the same thing as a very like one-pager grant agreement I made with the rancher, like, I need X, Y, and Z for these 3 pockets of funds.
Yeah.
And so I think giving whatever, let's say $2,000 is what you say, to Wildlife Services, with them agreeing to take those funds, I can get what I need out of there from the recording pretty easily. Now, if, this is what I was talking about, the subcommittee, if the group wants to put parameters to how those funds are spent by Wildlife Services, then that needs to be drafted up. But my contract with legal has already been sussed out and approved for kind of disbursement of pass-through funds to a certain extent, particularly for preventative measures. So that's pretty easy on that end. But if there's parameters that the group wants to attach to Wildlife Services, then that would need to be fleshed out with the
Do we
group. So
need to do that?
that's up to you guys.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like a parameter would be,
These have to
wolf
be used.
area, but,
Okay.
yeah, but not just any old
You know,
producer.
the geography, the,
For like the carcass removal in the area of activity.
you know, we can get real particular, I mean, we can talk about distance, you know, like maybe not a per mile, maybe a per mile is the easiest, or maybe, you know, if it's far out, then it's this many hundreds or something like that.
And we kind of think of this as a trial, like we don't have to put that much money towards it, we can just see if it works or if it doesn't next year, not bother with it. So,
Okay.
I mean,
I imagine it will take some time too. You get like wildly different responses from landowners and then ultimately you build up a head of steam.
From like Lower Bridge, what, like a mile radius, what would you say would be a good number to put on, like, those funds can be used within 5 miles of here? And then just trying to, so we have like a,
I need to look at a map before I put my foot in my mouth. I mean, it's difficult to guarantee anything because wolves move so much. Most of the year, most of the summer months, they're concentrated around sisters. And then as the winter progresses, they disperse potentially further away. And last February, we had them over at Steelhead Falls and stuff like that in that area. But that's just a jaunt, you know, they went over there and then went straight back. So if you're asking me like where's hot, warm, cold, you know,
just a general, within 10 miles of here, they can use these funds, is all I was going
Or
to.
maybe you could,
or a map.
with a little artistic license, just kind of shade in some area on a map.
yeah, we can do that. I mean, Jen has access to it, I think you all do. We have that polygon, which,
Is that the aqua that you're
The
going to get?
aqua,
Yeah, we could
specifically
use the
for
aqua
fishes.
map area and then we'll actually.
It's
Like, would you buffer that out from that, or
it's
just?
kind of
just where
buffered
the-
already. Unfortunately, like I said, this particular group of wolves doesn't have a collar. And so it's, it's bound to get updates. I think it was the depredation that we had last year. I know it was. It took place 100 yards outside of that aqua. So it's to the best of our abilities, we make our best judgments. So that's how it goes.
And I think if you would recommend, like, all right, it's outside 100 yards outside the aqua, but you still think that it's worth us spending the money or giving the voucher, whatever we're doing, for the hauler to come in, I think we'd still go for it, I mean, it's just.
Yep. Yeah, it's in the area. So I'm not sure which roads they are that go from Lower Bridge all the way over to Sisters. You guys would know. But you've got Holmes Road that goes up through there, and then Highway 20, right? Highway 20 that goes through
126.
126 that goes through Sisters itself. We see lots of congregated elk there in the wintertime. Wolves pursue elk. So if you've got elk habitat overlapping with producer habitat, that's where conflicts typically happen. So
Yeah, so maybe you could produce and
Yep.
I've deferred to
Eastern,
Aaron,
and an
yeah.
eastern area map for the.
Yeah, for sure,
the-
Eastern.
The sage grouse area is concerned. Okay,
Is that outside
So-
of purview, sorry? Is there wolf activity to the east that you're talking about?
Wolves very much disperse through Camp Creek
Disperse into-
Road, Bear
okay.
Creek area, yeah, so,
Bear Creek?
Huh?
Bear Creek Road?
yeah, it's a very common dispersal corridor. They don't always stay, but, they definitely disperse through the sage. We have wolves further south on the Deschutes on the border near Fort Rock too.
Yeah.
So they were up in the Brothers area this winter.
and he was saying if you get rid of some of those carcasses out there, then less likelihood of lingering.
Yeah,
So that's-
yeah,
I might, that's on the phone.
it's a big win.
Hold on.
And, so then so maybe 2,500 for box lights, 2,000 for deposit for haulers, and, the third piece we had on the list was more preventative funds for ranchers that had experienced depredation last year. And we could assign the remainder to that, or we could, if someone has, a fourth thing they want to add to the list for this package, then
I thought about air cans, but I don't know. We could do a couple of air cans too. Those run at $300 a pop. So if you got 3 of those, it's another tool that came to mind.
Just make a bang every now and then or something?
Yeah, we use them primarily for spooking elk off of hay and stuff like that, alfalfa. It works with wolves too. I hesitated in bringing it up before because usually we put them out on big forest allotments where you're not going to bother people. So I don't know
There will be lots
how
of,
popular they
yeah.
are shoots.
I think that's probably not the most ideal tool.
I like the ones they have out on like the vineyards and stuff, birds off, is that kind of the same?
I haven't seen those.
I've heard of that for Canada geese.
It sounds like a big shotgun.
Yeah.
But I've also had complaints, I use fox lights with my sheep, and still get complaints about those. Like, what's this, there's a police in the area every night? And I'm like, yeah, they have all these colours,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
the police, yeah.
It's not the wolves, it's the neighbors. Right?
Yeah, it's something.
So any fourth thought? 3,500 in the continued funds to rancher, or do we want to mix those numbers up, 2,500, 2,000, 3,500 at all?
And we're kind of off the idea of just providing dump access, like paying for self-cleaning of bone pits and hauling, just to,
Good.
I just don't know
I mean, it
how
just,
to word it.
I just kind of got the feeling that
Yeah.
it was, not
gonna
many
really
people
happen.
would use it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You can do like.
Well, I guess that's the question is, would people take it if they were offered to dump for free? Maybe,
I don't know.
yeah.
Depends on the drive time.
It's the time and the drive and the effort.
You
Sounds
you
like
would have to have
something
some sort of program set up for those funds, for the reporting requirements.
Yeah.
Versus, wildlife services is easier if they want to do it, if they will agree to it, because it's just pass through.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
It's a little bit easier to get away with that.
Buying the fox lights, you got to
Yeah,
see.
super, I could do that on Amazon for you, because, yeah.
I think that's the only place you can buy them.
I'll reach out to you guys, or what, I only said Amazon because I heard them say that. I have no idea where to buy them.
Okay.
I'll reach out to the experts when the time comes.
Well, all right, so in the interest of time, does someone want to make a motion?
Happy to, what was the totals? Am I reading all this out? What is it?
Or you could just say, I think you could just say, you move the package that we just discussed.
Okay, I make the
What do
motion.
you think?
I think that's fair, and will you put the caveat in there of, 2 caveats, one, that if Wildlife Services is not able to be a partner right now for that, then those funds are going to go to law. And then if we're doing all one package, then Sarah Lee is gonna have to abstain from the vote. If you do 3 separate motions, then she can be included in the Foxlight vote and the Wildlife Services one, but not for the rancher.
Sarah Lee, do you have a preference?
Sorry, I'm here. No preference really. Whatever is easiest logistically,
There's enough people to do it without Sarah Lee.
Yeah, in the interest of time, maybe we just keep this as bundle. But with that caveat that if Wildlife Services or another entity is not willing to kind of be the keeper of those $2,500, $2,000, hauler voucher funds, and what would you all want to do with them?
make a contract with the hauler themselves and then just have them on retainer. You can't do that?
That gets super tricky.
Oh,
We don't have
yeah.
any paperwork. That's a lot of admit. I don't think that we're in a place right now, given the timeline, to do that. I think that a thought out program next year could potentially do that. I'm not able to go and just reach out to contractors and then draft the contract up with expectations and parameters. So it gets pretty tricky just because of this timeline. If the group wants to look forward to do that for 2025, I think we can put processes in place.
Do we need to put into the motion subcommittee about working out what the parameters are? I suppose it all depends on whether that other entity is able to hold the funds anyways,
They-
before we start putting,
They can.
okay.
I
Okay,
just
Willie.
texted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, great. So that's answered. So you
I-
have to
I
put
said,
it out
can-
in
We don't
there.
have to have a copy.
Can the depredation committee give wildlife services funds? Yes.
Okay,
There we go. That's it.
All right.
great. Then we can remove the
So we
caveat.
have a three-piece package. It's moved. Is there a second?
Wait, who moved, Ethan moved it, okay, sorry.
Discussion of. We'll move again.
Will someone second, or does someone want to second?
Well, we're both.
Stephen got it?
John,
Okay,
John.
yeah, okay.
But just to confirm, we
Can't keep
are
up with
doing
this.
a,
sorry.
No, you did.
I am.
we are gonna put some caveats around how
It's too late.
we moved it. Nice, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to, I don't think we have to cover that in the motion.
Yeah.
So all those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Next witness. Herding cats.
I mean, there was a lot of kind of aspects of that to discuss.
Yeah, if you guys do want to put some caveats with wildlife services on that contractor, I think a subcommittee one-pager, similar to what you guys did with the other grant application, would be helpful probably to them if you guys want to have parameters on that. The contract that I can draft up with them is pretty cut and dry as far as legal perspective, but if the committee wants to have separate or additional parameters that they fall within for the, I mean, it's $2,000, it's a pilot program, you could just do it as is and see what happens and do lessons learned, or you could put together a one-pager if you want to meet up over a beer and spend an hour doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can
Yes.
also ask wildlife services to document how they spent their time, like timekeeping basically. So we have them do that for the funds we give them.
I don't know when this person will be starting their job.
That's it, so we're two, right, the wildlife service specialists are the two that in Deschutes County. Then there's the non-lethal wolf specialist for the or
The area,
Broad
yeah,
County.
the larger
Yeah.
area, yeah.
And we're talking wildlife services, the two Deschutes County contacts for this particular program.
You would be able to give the funds, so the two in Deschutes County aren't doing wolf work at all, that's not
It's
their role.
outside of their jurisdiction.
Yeah,
Oh.
so the person in Madras who's covering multiple counties.
So this new person
Yeah,
is the
so
one, okay.
I'll ask him when this new person is. gonna
Yeah,
be
or
on
just a
board.
contact for that, we don't need necessarily that new person now, but whoever I can contact with in Madras to be like, we want to give you these funds for this purpose to be spent by whatever. I don't think, the funds don't have, the receipts don't have to come through by then, I don't believe, is my understanding of the quick reading of that.
If he's the tri-county, those funds can only be spent in Deschutes County.
And then be part of the caveats of use, that could be the county.
It's a good question. I know for sure the depredation does, I know the missing does. I do, in this ad hoc, we have the ODA involved in that of like, can we combine counties and combine resources? And I think the answer is yes, we may be able to use that outside of Deschutes County. So these are good things to flush through in the subcommittee. If you wanna,
You can imagine something, like our Jefferson County, Deschutes County situation. You can imagine getting rid of a bone just across the county boundary, may be really helpful.
Yeah.
To preventing depredations in Deschutes County.
Right. I'll look into that very specific question and BCC email the group on that. If you guys, and you don't have to decide now, but if Stephen, Ethan, John, or whoever want to reinvigorate their subcommittee and come up with a one-pager, just text me and email me and let me know, and I'll be sure to include that in whatever paperwork we go over.
All right.
5 minutes left. We had a discussion about mitigating political impact on producers and ranchers of personal information disclosure that I don't think we have time.
We can totally punt that to next meeting because we don't have any grant applications out.
Okay.
So I can put a note just to have that as an agenda item for next time.
We also have on our agenda time for public comments. If there's anyone.
I have one more item.
Oh, you do? Okay.
It should be on there, the
Yes.
county email.
Oh, yeah, sorry, okay.
Only because
Let's do
I'm
that.
getting daily reminders from the powers that be. All of you in the room, who are on the committee, thank you very much, have an email account from the county because you've gone, and Sarah Lee too, have gone through the process. And so I would like to start using it. I did use it for this committee, but I cheated and BCC'd all your personal emails. So that's probably how you got all the materials for this. So if anyone's having problems accessing their email, you can access your email because I have emails to you in your county email account. So if anyone's having issues accessing that, please contact me. Going forward, for all of those, who is everyone in this room and Sarah Lee, I'm going to use your county email account as a form of communication. What I will do for reminder emails, I will send reminder, check your county email for materials. Just because as you probably see, this is a committee that's being followed. There was an editorial this week on this committee meeting, so it is being followed. We could get public records requests, so we just make it easier for everybody, use that county email address. So reach out to me individually if you have any issues accessing that, but please all test it this week to make sure that you've gotten emails from me. It should just be a couple in there. That's it. Thank you.
We have action items. Gonna make Matt.
Okay, so time for public comment. Does anyone in the room want to make public comment or anyone online want to provide public comment? Hearing none. We can move to the next steps. So.
I would just say thanks for making this open to the public. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today. Okay, so next steps, next meeting, January, will we doodle that?
Yeah, I have it in here. You guys indicated your preference is to do a doodle poll for the exact time and date, so I'll send a doodle poll out the next week or 2 or 3. By end of October, I'll commit to doing a doodle poll for the January meeting. I'll give lots of options there because I know we're coming off the holiday season, so we'll just continue to do a doodle poll unless you guys tell me otherwise.
And in January, we'll talk about 2025 grants. We'll come back to this disclosure of personal information item. And it says guest speakers. Is that a?
It said these are all question marks. Yes,
Ask
do
people
you
whether
want, do you want to invite this new non-lethal
wildlife
specialist?
services
Yeah.
person again?
Do we want the do we want the non-lethal wolf specialist and the 2 county wildlife specialists, even though they don't have the jurisdiction?
Yeah, I don't know how comfortable I am in inviting them because I know that their supervisor strictly wants them to be doing not wolf stuff.
Okay.
They're great guys and I'll talk to the supervisor maybe and see if,
You can get back to me then.
yeah, I don't know.
Do you want
But for the wolf
The
non-lethal
wolf
person.
specific person, yes, the non-specific.
and do you want the new wolf specialist, non-lethal wolf specialist to present on anything or just give an introduction on who they are and then join the discussion as it goes? Okay.
Want to scare them off?
I mean, if we meet in January, we gotta get going on the 2025 grant application right away, right?
Yeah, I'm really, really hoping that they delay again. It's been like 3 years in a row that it's been like end of March that the deadline is. Technically on the website says, I think, 3rd week of February. But it just seems to be, and it's Sunny, she's been here before. She's pretty lenient because a lot of wolf committees don't even have this sort of kind of coordination. So
lot
there's
of
like
them-
one person, you know,
We are out calving at
yeah,
that time.
yeah, I've been doing one person doing the application, so, we can, I think that we can feasibly discuss in the January meeting, is there any outreach you wanted to people for the applications, and we can either have a one-off meeting, or we can discuss how the application process goes, but at this time, we have an open application process. We don't have any applications in. We could reach out to the person that has submitted an application before. It sounds like there may be interest in applying for preventive measure funds. They're potentially missing livestock funds there. So I'm happy to make that reach out just to say, hey, if you want to get an application in before the committee, or next meeting in January, so I can do that and then can kind of continue the conversation otherwise. If that works for everyone? Okay. Great.
Thank you, Jen.
Yep.
Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you all, sorry, but I'll do it.
This is the best one. Yeah.
We bagged a whole item, so, but,
You want to officially adjourn for me?
yes, we're adjourned.
Great. 7:31 technically, so not just one. Thank you, Sarah Lee.
We don't need to move to adjourn, right?
I don't think, no, just say we're adjourned. I am not Kim or legal counsel, so. All right, I'm gonna end the online meeting. Thanks, guys. I think I'm gonna end it, I don't know.